It's taking a while. Okay, you can begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Keisha Jackson, and on behalf of my group, which consists of Nikisha Humphrey and Marie Wren, we are presenting Chapter 12, Leadership, Power, and Influence. These are the objectives of this presentation: transformational and charismatic leadership, power, influence, and leadership, sources of leader power in organizations, increasing power through political activity, tactics for a certain leader influence, and ethical considerations in using power and politics. So first, let's look at transformational and charismatic leadership. Charismatic and transformational leadership have been of both great interest to researchers. One of the key characteristics of both charismatic and transformational leadership is that they are based largely on the strength of the leader's personal power rather than on a position of authority granted by an organization. So, what is transactional leadership? It is a transaction or exchange process between leaders and followers. Let us take a look further into the transactional leader. So this person recognizes followers' needs and desires and then clarifies how those needs and desires will be satisfied in exchange for meeting specified objectives or performing certain duties. Rewards, mainly extrinsic, such as pay rises, bonuses, and benefits, are awarded to subordinates for job performance in the organization. This is because leaders benefit from the completion of tasks. For example, where I work, we used to have a PMS system that was aligned with the strategic goals, and there was a bonus scheme that was attached to it. What used to happen is that every division was given certain goals to reach within a fiscal year. And at the end of the fiscal year, they would tally the amount of days. The most you could have gotten as a unit is 14 days for good work, basically, right? So where I used to work in accounts, one of the goals were every month we had to pay all our debtors, at least 70% of our debtors, within the 30 days time frame. If we did not, we will lose our mark for that particular day. So for example, in 1 year, you could make 12 points. Once it is you reach 9 for the least, you'll be awarded the maximum amount of days you can for that objective. If you reach between, let's say 6 for the least, you will get half the reward for that objective. Anything under 6, you will get nothing at all. Transactional leaders focus on the present and excel at keeping the organization running smoothly and efficiently. Now, these leaders tend to excel at traditional management functions such as planning and budgeting, and they're more focused on the impersonal aspects of your performance, meaning they are a little bureaucratic in thinking. For example, during the COVID-19, many managers will find it very hard to be flexible in terms of the job rules, in terms of rotating staff, with like parents with minors at home, as they believe that the current adjustments by the government are in disregard for the organization's rules and regulations. Transactional leadership can be quite effective by clarifying expectations. Leaders can build followers' confidence, right? So transactional leaders have a belief that Satisfying the needs of subordinates can improve the productivity, and morale of subordinates. And this is not always true. And because sometimes money is not only enough, right? And it causes temporary satisfaction. And what happens is that it doesn't even guarantee the increased productivity and morale. I mean, trust me, I work in the public sector and I have seen it all, and it does not. A transactional leader is committed to following the rules so that they tend to be unflexible and resistant to change as they seek to maintain stability within the organization. For example, my company's PMS objectives will always be in line with the company strategic plan. And this was to ensure that staff activities and tasks would have ended in one result, which would have been the company's objectives being met. When tasks were not completed in a specified time frame, the unit, the individual, or the division was penalized by reduction in days for the bonus payments, as I said earlier on. Transactional skills are important for all leaders. And this is so because no matter what, even if you are a transformational leader, the company always comes first. And as a manager, the rules of the company must always be adhered to, and your subordinates must always understand what it is are the rules of the company as well. So, what is transformational leadership? Transformational leadership is characterized by the ability to bring about significant change in followers and organization. Let us take a further look into the transformational leader. Now, this person have the ability to lead changes in an organization's vision, strategy, and culture, as well as promote innovation in products and technologies. So, a transformational leader focuses on intangible qualities such as vision, shared values, and ideas in order to build relationships in the organization, giving a greater meaning to separate activities and common ground to enlist followers in the change process, opposed to analyzing and controlling specific transactions with the use of rules, directions, and incentives. For example, I could only give examples of where I'm working, right? Supervisors, they were forced to become transformational leaders. And it wasn't because of COVID-19, it was because of in 2015, when the current regime came on board, what they did is that they cut out stuff like food hampers, any extrinsic rewards, they cut it out entirely. So what you had was staff that became demotivated, staff that would train up any hours of work, leaving at any time of the day. So the managers had to find a way to get their staff back. And they couldn't do it with dangling a carrot in front of them. They had to come in form of a way that, you have to meet them halfway. They had to transform themselves to say, here what? We understand what you are coming from. Transformational leadership is based on personal values, beliefs, and qualities of the leader rather than on an exchange process between leaders and followers. The transformational leader, according to recent studies, have a positive impact on the development and performance of followers. For example, my supervisor, he is all about empowering his junior staff. And again, he doesn't have to dangle that carrot and a stick in front of us, because what he does is involve us in the decision making for the day-to-day running of the organization. Because when he does that, we now have a better idea and a better outlook of the company. Transformational leadership skills can be learned and are not ingrained personality characteristics. Certain personality traits can make it easier for a leader to display transformational leadership behaviors. One such trait is agreeableness. This is the degree to which a person is able to get along with others, being good-natured, cooperative, forgiving, compassionate, understanding, and trusting. And we have seen it coming up. COVID-19 is one of the best examples, because we have seen it, especially in my job place. I know where we have single mothers who don't even report to work. They are actually working solely from home. That is because his or her manager would have said, here what, this person is a parent. And in order for us to get the work done, we need to meet this person halfway. This person has no child, nobody to look after his or her child. And the funny thing is, last week I went to rituals and I found something very interesting. There was a mother there at rituals with her daughter, and the supervisor was right there. And I remembered where the Prime Minister said earlier on that children were not allowed to be in the workplace. They let you have a supervisor who is willing to bend those rules because a mother is unable to have someone look after her daughter. Transformational leaders are typically emotionally stable and positively engaged with the world around them. And they have a strong ability to recognize and understand others' emotions, emotional intelligence. Now, these leaders accomplish change by building networks of positive relationships. For example, in our Zoom meetings, what my supervisor loves to do is he loves for us to make decisions, because he understands that, here what, if I make a decision that they don't like, it could have a negative effect on how the day-to-day run of the activities will be done, right? It makes us more confident so that we will have, it makes us comfortable so that we'll be more confident to feel like, we could make opinions and we could brainstorm and we could have new ideas. And this level of teamwork between the subordinate and the superior, or supervisor in work, is essential, as it embraces change, creativity, and innovation in the workplace. And it also increases morale and productivity without the need for extrinsic rewards. So, transformational leadership versus transactional leadership. Transformational leadership develops followers into leaders. Followers are given freedom to control their own behavior. I can only use my job as an example because that's where I've been working for the last 15 years. Because of what my supervisor does, he have actually created the empowerment. He have actually empowered us to make decisions amongst ourselves. And all we have to do is tell him afterwards. And if he don't like it, he will say, here what, you know what, tweak this or tweak that. But he does not shoot it down entirely. He still shows us a way in order for us to make it better. So he makes us know, like, hey, this is you have a word here, and we understand that your word in the organization is solid, basically. Transformational leadership elevates the concerns of followers from lower level physical needs, such as safety and security, to higher level psychological needs, such as self-esteem and self-actualization. So transformational leaders motivate people to do more. Transformational leaders change followers so that they are empowered to change the organization. So going back to me again, I can reuse me. Our supervisor, what he does is he allows us to come up with procedures that will affect our day-to-day runnings. Those procedures change the way the organization operates. It makes it more efficient, and it makes it easier to meet the targeted goals at the end of the month. You know, the transformational leader, he is using things like wages, health and safety. He makes sure that these conditions are adequately met. Transformational leadership inspires followers to go beyond their own self-interest for the good of the group. Right now, currently, that has been happening in my workplace, because you might think that we are stupid, and you might say, better earlier than me. But we have been using our personal computers since March to work at home without any compensation. And the reason for this is because my supervisor, who's a transformational leader, motivate us to do stuff that are not expected, right? So where somebody else might say, I'm not using my personal laptop just like that the company needs to pay me for my electricity or for my internet bill. For us, because of the relationship we have with our supervisor, it didn't even matter, because he has basically showed us that, you know, I am here with you if you have any problems or any concern, to the point that we now actually love our job more than the compensation itself. Transformational leadership paints a vision of a desired future state and communicates it in a way that makes the pain of change worth the effort. The most significant role of the transformational leader may be vision for the organization that is significantly, maybe a vision for the organization that is significantly better than the old one, and to enlist others in sharing the dream. So change can only occur when people have a sense of purpose, as I said before, as well as a desirable picture of where the organization is going. But as without a vision, there can be no transformation. Let us take a look now at charismatic leadership. So, what is charisma? Charisma is a seemingly innate ability to inspire enthusiasm, interest, and affection from followers. So, anyone on hearing the definition want to explain, want to give it a shot at what a charismatic leader is? Anybody? Anybody want to give it a go? Okay.
Okay, so I think charismatic leadership entails agreeableness, as you had mentioned before. The person is down to earth. The person is empathetic or expresses empathy towards others. He value others more above himself, and he put the goals of the organizational before his own self-interest.
Right. So you are along the right lines, because here is saying a charismatic leader is a leader who has the ability to inspire, motivate people to do more than they would normally do, despite obstacles and personal sacrifice. They also have an emotional impact on people because they appeal to both the heart and the mind. But bear in mind, it could be negative and both positive, but you'll get there in a little bit. So, what makes a charismatic leader? This person creates an atmosphere of change, articulate an idealized vision of a future that is significantly better than what now exists. For example, you have Martin Luther King, who dreamt of a society where everyone is equal. You have Mahatma Gandhi, who wanted different religions to live in peace in India. You also have Winston Churchill, who wanted the British to stay resilient during the war. This person have an ability to communicate complex ideas and goals in clear, compelling ways. Right? So in this way, everyone from the CEO, who is the highest manager, to the lowest member of staff, to be the cleaner, understands and identify with their message. This person inspires followers with an abiding faith, even if the faith can be stated in specific goals that are easily attained. The faith itself becomes an award to followers. They act in unconventional ways and use unconventional methods means to transcend the status quo. This is the existing state of affairs regarding social or political issues. So you see, we have here Martin Luther King Jr. You know, a little quote, he's saying, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Right? We have Mahatma Gandhi, who is saying, live as if you were to die tomorrow, learn as if you were to live forever. You have Winston Churchill, who said here, we shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight in the hills, we shall never surrender. What motivation! So, charismatic leaders earn followers' trust by willing to incur great personal risks, putting themselves on the line, affirms the leaders as passionate advocates for their vision. For example, Martin Luther King Jr., he received death threats against himself and his family almost every day during the civil rights movement. Source of influence comes from personal characteristics rather than a formal position of authority. The leader may hold a position of authority. However, the leader is admired and respected because of their personal qualities rather than the power and authority they hold in the organization. Let us take a look at the black hat of charisma. One characteristic of charisma noted by researchers is that it has positive and negative outcomes. Leaders with tremendous charisma or who had positive outcomes are also known as socialized leaders. Socialized charismatic leaders are empowering, egalitarian, and supportive individuals who practice socialized behavior, which is based on valuing others. So, for example, here you have Mother Teresa, who became famous as a Catholic nun who dedicated her life to caring for the destitute and dying in the slums of Calcutta. And she has a little quote here saying, do not wait for leaders, do it alone, person to person. You have John F. Kennedy, who's an American president who took vigorous action in the cause of equal rights, calling for new civil rights legislation. As he says here, the ignorance of one voter in a democracy impairs the security of all. Charisma isn't always used to benefit the group, organization, or society. It can also be used for self-serving purposes, which leads to deception, manipulation, and exploitation of others. Because the basis of charisma is emotional rather than logical or rational, it is risky and potentially dangerous. Leaders with tremendous charisma who had negative outcomes are also known as personalized leaders. Personalized charismatic leaders are leaders who react to organizational problems in terms of their own needs rather than the needs of the whole, and often act in ways that can have disastrous consequences for others. They are characterized as self-aggrandizing, non-egalitarian, and exploitive. They engage in personalized behavior, which is based on caring about self. Anybody have any examples they know of personalized charismatic leaders in the world's history? Anybody?
Adolf Hitler is the most infamous.
Right, let's take a look at my examples. So we have Adolf Hitler, who was the leader of Germany's Nazi party. He was one of the most powerful and notorious dictators of the 20th century. Hitler capitalized on economic woes, popular discontent, and political infighting to take absolute power in Germany beginning 1933. Look at this quote. What good fortune for governments that people do not think. I mean, it happens right in every election around the world, including anyone that just went in the American election. You have Charles Manson, who was an American cult leader whose followers carried out several notorious murders in the late 1960s. Now, mind you, he did not do any one of these murders himself. He heavily influenced people to do murders on behalf of him. Hence the reason why he was jailed. You have Idi Amin, who was an Ugandan president best known for his brutal regime and crimes against humanity while in power from 1971 to 1979. I will now put you on to my group mate, Nikisha Humphrey, for power, influence, and leadership.
Thank you, Keisha. So coming off the heels of what Keisha said, let us take a look at power and its definition, as well as influence and its definition. So power is an intangible force in organizations. It cannot be seen, but its effects can be felt, sorry. Power is the ability of one person or department in an organization to influence other people to bring about desired outcomes. It is the potential to influence others within the organization with the goal of attaining desired outcomes for power holders. Potential power is realized through the processes of politics and influence. Sometimes the term power and influence are used synonymously, but there are distinctions between the two. Basically, influence is the effect a person's actions have on attitudes, values, beliefs, or actions of others, whereas power is the capacity to cause a change in a person. Influence may be thought of as the degree of the actual change. So, an example of this, um, me doing my degree was because I was influenced by various members of my family who started businesses based on their skill set. So I was thinking, okay, let me do a management degree, which can in turn help them in managing the business affairs of um, their organization. Although we usually think of power and influence as belonging to the leader, in reality, they result from the interaction of leaders and followers in specific situations. So now we'll take a look at types of power. Right. So position power can be defined largely by the organization's policies and procedure, and personal power is based on the leader's special knowledge or personal characteristics. Right? These are two subheadings for 5 types of leader power. The first one is legitimate power, and the second is reward power, And the third is cohesive power under the subheading position power. And then we have under personal power subheading expert power and referent power. So you might be thinking, what do these actually mean? So let's take a closer look at their definition. Legitimate power is the authority granted from a formal position in an organization. So, for example, let's take a president of a corporation. He would have certain powers because of the office he holds in the corporation, right? Second is reward power, which stems from the authority to bestow rewards onto others. Now, in an organization, you may have a supervisor who may provide, let's say, comp time. So you may get a task done or an objective which your supervisor set out, and because you have done that on time or completed the task on time, he or she may reward you with comp time. Thirdly, third power we have is coercive power, which refers to the power to punish or recommend punishment, which is the opposite of reward power. So with coercive power, this may include a supervisor threatening to write you up, threatening demotion, pay cuts to lay you off, or even termination if you don't follow orders, right? For example, in the public service, just like Keisha, myself, they can write you up, and if it's a bad write-up, you can be moved or transferred, right? The fourth one is expert power. This is as a result from a leader's special knowledge or skills regarding tasks performed by followers. So let's say, for example, you have a marketing director, right? This person may have risen to their position because of their knowledge in the marketing field. Now, I have done intro to marketing, and let me tell you, whoever is the marketing director deserves a little bit of power because that course wasn't easy. And last but not least, we have referent power, which is the authority based on personality characteristics that command followers' attention, respect, admiration, so that they want to emulate the leader. If we look at the entertainment world, a good example is Lady Gaga, right? She is someone I would say who has referent power because she has on Twitter 67 million followers. And these people respect her, and they really want to know what Lady Gaga up to, right? Some even aspire to be like her. So in this respect, she has referent power over her followers. Now we will take a look at responses to use of power, be it position and personal. Leaders use the various types of power to influence others to do what is necessary to accomplish organizational goals. There are three distinct outcomes that may result from the leader's use of power. One is compliance, which is successfully used with position power. Two is resistance. This is as a result of the excessive use of position power. Three is commitment. This is generated by the use of personal power. So let's dissect these three. Right? So compliance, people obey directions that are given by leaders, whether or not the employee agree or disagree with the instructions given, or in some cases believe the leader's direction may not, or directives may not be right or wrong. In this situation, employees tend to comply with the instructions whether they like it or not, which results in the employees giving the necessary level of output required for the given task or goal to be completed, instead of giving their full potential or even beyond. Hence the popular phrase, comply then complete. We look at resistance. Resistance is basically the refusal to accept or comply with something. Employees will deliberately try to avoid carrying out a task and, in some instances, blatantly disobey orders. As a result, the leader's powers will be rendered as ineffective, or the leader may become even powerless. Now, a great example, we had a meeting at my organization on Monday to find a solution to a situation we've been having. And the leader who called the meeting to order went up against another employee who in turn said that he was wasting her time and she don't need to be here, and let whoever has the problem with her call her directly, and then she stormed out. So in that case, our leader was rendered powerless. He didn't go after her, he didn't do anything. There was nothing done after she did that. So in that case, she resisted his solution and he was rendered powerless by her action. Commitment says when leaders use personal power attributes such as dependability, inclusivity, empathy, and empowerment, employees tend to become committed to the leader's viewpoint or ideas and will enthusiastically do what is necessary from initiation to completion of the instruction. So, successful leaders may use both position and personal power, right? Now we'll take a look at the role of dependency. Dependency is the state of relying on or being controlled by someone or something. One of the key aspects of power is that it is a function of dependence. In any organization, employees are dependent on leaders for resources, information, tools and equipment, cooperation, and remuneration. This dependence, this dependency gives the leader power and a sense of control. The nature of dependency relationships between leaders and subordinates in organization fluctuates depending on economic circumstance. So we all know the whole world is going through a pandemic, and employees are dependent on organization, not leaders, for continued employment. And with the global economic downturn, leaders are exercising their position power to reduce employment and salaries or even working hours. I personally know of an organization that has cut their employees' salary by 20%, as well as they have to take a mandatory day off during the week. So they're working 4 days a week with 20%, 80% of their salary. Okay. Now we move over to control over resources. Dependency within organizations is related to a person's control over resources. Resources include such things as jobs, rewards, financial support, expertise, knowledge, material, information, and time. Leaders and organizations have more control and power when resources are high on three characteristics: importance, scarcity, and non-substitutability. So let's look at importance. Importance. Resources can be important for a variety of reasons. For example, they may be essential elements of a key product. All right, so if I'm a baker, an essential element to my products would be flour. So obviously I need flour. And next essential element may be baking powder and yeast. So those three things are very important if I'm a baker to carry out my day-to-day activities. Right. Scarcity. This refers to whether the resource is easy or difficult to obtain. A resource that is difficult or expensive to acquire is more valuable and creates more dependency than one that is widely available. So I am a parent, and an example of this is online learning. So for my daughter to be able to do online learning, she may need a device. So right now, the devices, which are laptops and tablets, are very scarce, and then persons are hiking up their price. So on top of being scarce, it will be expensive when we do get one. Let's look at non-substitutability, which means that leaders or employees with control over resources with no viable substitute will have more power. These resources may include knowledge and expertise, as well as access to people with high power. For example, an executive secretary that has daily access to the CEO might have more power than middle managers who must compete for a few minutes of the CEO's time, right? And that concludes this part of the presentation. I would now hand you over to Anne-Marie, who would let you know about sources of leader power in organizations.
Okay, thank you very much, Nikisha. Good night, sir and fellow students. We will now discuss sources, power, and influence. So, according to D.J. Hickson, in 1971, who wrote the strategic contingency theory, which states that a leader becomes a central part of an organization due to his or her unique skills to solve issues or problems with others, which others are unable to solve. This results as too much dependency lies on a leader, so he or she is not easily replaceable. This reminds me of my company's IT administrator. In my company, internal and external operations and functions are dependent on two main resources, human and technology. And one of the IT admin's specialized skills is programming. He is a boss when it comes to writing programs for the various types of software that each department uses. And on a monthly basis, my accountant relies on him to write programs for the software which she uses in order to generate her monthly manager's reports, which are requested by the executives and the departmental managers. In addition, he's also a whiz when it comes to computers, repairs, and maintenance. I remember one morning when I got to the office, the computer which I do the monthly processing of the fortnightly payroll was not coming on, not for the work. So I called them and I told them what was happening because I had a fortnightly payroll to run. So he came, he looked at the computer, he checked all of the plugs, he checked all of the connections, and he said, well, everything seems to be in place. He said, so, okay, let's put on the computer and see if there's any other problem or what the problem might be. So I pressed the button, and just like before, nothing came on. And at this point, I was kind of a little frantic because, time was ticking. So I told him, I said, you see, look, nothing is coming on. So he watched me very cool, collectively, and he said, well, yeah, nothing will come on because the button that you press operates the CD drive. He said, girlfriend, the power button to the computer is to the side of the CPU. And with the click of that button, bam, my computer came in. To add insult to injury, he left a little reminder note at the bottom of the monitor. Please remember, the computer's power button is located at the side of the CPU. And this is something that I really did forget, that the button was located there. Now, this theory identifies additional sources of power in organizations that are not linked to the specific person or position, but to the role that the leader plays in the overall functioning of the organization. So here we have a diagram. This diagram lists 4 additional sources of power identified by the strategic contingency theory in relation to the role played by a leader in the functioning of the organization. The 4 sources are interdepartmental dependency, control over information, organizational centrality, and coping with uncertainty. And as you can see in the diagram, all four sources result in the leader increasing his or her power within the organization. So we are going to further explore each of these following sources. Interdepartmental dependency. One key source of leader power in many organizations is interdepartmental dependency. Materials, resources, and information may flow between departments in one direction. In such cases, leaders in the department receiving resources will have less power than those in the department that provides them. So this again reminds me of my company, in where we have a procurement department which has greater power over our electronic solutions department, as the procurement officer is responsible. My apology. The electronic solutions department is the procurement officer is responsible for ordering all of the materials and equipment the alarms technicians would need in order to carry out their job functions on a daily basis. So this means that the procurement department has a greater power because they are the provider, whereas electronic solutions department has less power as they are the receivers. Control over information. Control over information is an important source of power for leaders, as some leaders will always have access to more information than others. Leaders also have the power as to how much information can be disseminated and to whom will receive it. So classic again, using my company, our financial controller can disseminate managers' reports to each of the departmental managers, which show them their monthly revenue and expenses. However, when it comes to the company's cash flow statements and the statements of financial position, those reports are shared only with the managing director and not the operational or departmental manager. However, control over information can also be a source of power for lower level leaders and employees. Employees who have exclusive access to information needed by leaders to make decisions gain power as a result. For example, top executives are dependent on the alarms installation supervisor in my company for the quarterly report on stock inventory and existing and new jobs that the technicians are to perform, which will bring in revenue to the company. Organizational centrality. Organizational centrality reflects a leader's or department's role in the primary activity of an organization. One measure of centrality is the extent to which the work of the leader's department affects the final output of the organization. Centrality is associated with more power because it reflects the contribution made to the organization. So for example, the departments that are most central to my organization, that has the most power, are the operational departments, which consists of our cash solution sections, the man services sections, and the electronic security section. The operational departments are responsible for generating the company's revenue, which allows the company to be in continued existence. Another central department that is central to the organization is the human resource department, as this is a critical department because the output of the organization, which contributes to the output of the organization, as this department provides the relevant workforce for the operational department. This also ties back to interdepartmental dependency. coping with uncertainty. The environment can change swiftly and create uncertainty and complexity for leaders in organizations in the face of uncertainty. And in the face of uncertainty, you can see where little information is available to leaders on appropriate courses of action. Leaders in departments that cope well with this uncertainty will increase their power. So take, for example, the economic hardships that is currently being experienced due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Many businesses have already closed down, and some are also anticipating foreclosure sometime in the near future. For our company, the financial controller has more power over the other managers when it comes to the distribution and spending of the company's finances. Because the financial controller prepares the monthly cash flow reports and statements, she has implemented strict budgetary measures to ensure that the company can meet its financial obligations on a day-to-day basis. Such obligations include the payment of fortnightly wages and monthly salaries to staff, and in addition, to also ensure the company's continuity in this time of uncertainty. She has also implemented that the fortnightly staff are now working at their basic 12-hour shifts, and all overtime has been discontinued until further notice. So I now hand you back to Keisha, who would take you through increasing power through political activity.
Okay, so politics involve activities to acquire, develop, and use power and other resources to obtain desired future outcomes when there is uncertainty or disagreement about choices. Politically skillful leaders strive to understand others' viewpoints, needs, desires, and goals, and use their understanding to influence people to act in ways that help the leader accomplish his or her goals for the team or organization. People who want to increase their power make sure their activities are visible and appreciated by others. Acquiring and using power is largely a political process. Individuals and departments within organizations also engage in political activity. Political behavior can either be positive or negative force. Leaders also use politics to increase their personal power. Another political approach is called impression management, which means people seek to control how others perceive them, often creating an impression of greater power as well as helping them gain more power. Now, two examples of political activities and political power in the workplace is that a manager may need to exert a large amount of pressure on a team to get something done by using the power of the position over others. So basically, it's like, your supervisor, and it happens a lot with chains of command, because where I'm working, there's a manager, and then there's my supervisor, and then there's us. Now, sometimes because my manager loves to delegate tasks to us, what happens is that many of these tasks is what he has to do to submit to our manager, who is the head of our particular unit. And when we fail to do it in a timely manner, he now has to put aside the human part of him and say, you know what, I need to come down on them. And basically what he does there is he is using his position power in order to initiate political activities within his work, in his staff. He's letting us know we are on crunch time, and if you all don't do this, then the consequences might be so severe that it will have a negative impact on the unit itself. Our next example is that employees who work behind the scenes build coalitions of believers in a new vision to convince others. For example, where I'm working, my group is 8 of us that we basically do the same thing. And we are what they call business operations assistants. And we form a group, a nice little WhatsApp group, which we have conversations every day. And what we do is that we discuss certain things in the group. So here you have everyone in the group exercising um their political power, basically. They're exercising political behavior. And then what we do now is that we try to bring it across our supervisor to bring him on board with what it is we had discussed, right? The root cause of political activities are often scarce resources, including time pressures, social and structural inequalities, and individual personal motivations. So I will now put you on to Nikisha for tactics for a certain leader influence.
Thank you, Keisha. So in here we're going to look at the use of rational persuasion, making people like you, relying on the rule of reciprocity, develop allies, ask for what you want, and remember the principle of scarcity and extend formal authority. So let's get started. Leaders use power to influence others, which requires both skill and willingness. Leaders have to determine the best approach for using their power. That is, the approach that is most likely to influence others by considering the individuals, groups, and situations involved. Leaders frequently use a combination of influence strategies, and people who use a wider variety of tactics are typically perceived as having greater power and influence. Successful influence tactics used by leaders fall into basic categories for influence action. The following are 7 principles which I previously mentioned for asserting leader influence. So number 1, use rational persuasion. Using facts, data, and logical argument to persuade others that a proposed idea or request is the best way to complete a task or accomplish a desired goal. Rational persuasion is most effective when a leader has technical knowledge and expertise related to the issue. Although referent power is also used, some parts of a rational argument cannot be backed up with facts and figures, so people have to believe in the leader's credibility to accept his or her argument. 2, make people like you. When a leader shows concern for others, demonstrate trust and respect, and treats people fairly, people are more likely to want to help and support the leader by doing what he or she asks. In addition, most people would like a leader who makes them feel good about themselves. Leaders who regularly praise individuals are always liked. And as Keisha previously explained about her supervisor, I think he would fall under this subheading of making people like you, because he gives them a certain degree of responsibility to make decisions for themselves, and he interacts with them, right? So 3 is rely on the rule of reciprocity. A primary way to turn that power into influence is to share what you have, whether it be time, resources, services, or emotional support. The unwritten rule of reciprocity means that leaders who do favors for others can expect others to do favors for them in return. Leaders also elicit the cooperative and sharing behavior they want from others by first demonstrating it with their own actions. 4. Develop allies. Reciprocating also plays an important role in developing network of allies. People who can help the leader accomplish his or her goals. Leaders can influence others by taking the time to talk with followers and other leaders outside of formal meetings to understand their needs and concerns, as well as to explain problems and describe the leader's point of view. Leaders consult with one another and reach a meeting of minds about a proposed decision, change, or strategy. Right? A leader can expand his or her network of allies by reaching out to establish contact with additional people. Some leaders expand their networks through the hiring, transfer, and promotion process, identifying and placing in key positions people who are sympathetic to the desired outcomes of the leaders can help achieve the leader's goals. 5. Ask for what you want. Ask for what you want. Another way to have influence is to make a direct appeal by being clear about what you want and asking for. Political activity is effective only when its leaders' visions, goals, and desired changes are made explicit so the organization can respond. Leaders can use their courage to be assertive, saying what they believe to persuade others. An explicit proposal may be accepted simply because other people have no better alternatives. Also, an explicit proposal for change or for a specific decision alternative will often receive favorable treatment when other options are less well defined. Effective political behavior requires sufficient forcefulness and risk taking at, to at least try to achieve the desired outcome. 6. Remember the principle of scarcity. This principle means that people usually want what they can't have. When things are less available, they become more desirable, like the law of the supply and demand. Leaders can learn to frame their requests or offers in such a way as to highlight the unique benefits and exclusive information being provided. One approach is to selectively release information that is not broadly available and that supports the leader's ideas or proposal. Letting people know they are getting a sneak peek at information captures their interest and make them more likely to support the leader's position. And 7, extend formal authority with expertise and credibility. This final principle for a certain influence is the leader's legitimate authority in the organization. The key to successful use of formal authority is to be knowledgeable, credible, and trustworthy. Managers who become known for their expertise, who are honest and straightforward with others, and who inspire trust can exert greater influence than those who simply try to issue orders. In addition, effective leaders keep the 6 previous influence principles in mind, realizing that influence depends primarily on personal rather than position power. By understanding the importance of rational persuasion, liking and friendship, reciprocity, networks of alliances, direct appeal, and scarcity, leaders can extend the power of their formal position and strengthen their influence over others. Now, I will hand you over to Anne Marie, who will discuss ethical consideration in using power and politics.
Thank you very much, Nikisha. Now we will discuss ethical considerations in using power and politics. Leadership is an opportunity to use power and influence to accomplish important organizational goals, but power can also be abused. In this diagram, leadership is divided into two types: personalized leaders and socialized leaders. And if you can remember, these two types of leadership were previously mentioned in the Black Hat of Charisma, which was presented by group member Keisha. So personalized leaders. Typically, they are selfish, impulsive, and exercise power for their own self-centered needs and interests rather than for the good of the organization. Socialized leaders exercise power in the service of higher goals that will benefit others and the organization as a whole. So, a classic example of this is I had two previous financial controllers who fell into both of these types. So, leader A was a socialized leader who was very charismatic and I must mention very easy on the eyes. Of course, the ladies in the class would know what that figure of speech means, and one of the most down to earth leaders in the organization. During his tenure, we were going through our internal financial audit, and he rolled up his sleeves, he got down into the trenches with us, his staff, and he stayed with us on work late. He asked that we come out on weekends, and he too came and spent both Saturday and Sundays with us at the office. He bought us lunch on both of the days from TGI, of course, and he ensured that everyone got home safely at the end of each day. He too also made sure that he left the office after the last member of his staff left to go home. And when he got home, he called and made sure everyone had reached their destination safely. Under his tenure, the company got a great internal auditing rating, and he decided to reward the female staff members. We got a luxury pedicure package at a well-known spa, and our two male staff also got lovely rewards. But sadly, he left to go and run his own business. In comes leader B, who was a personalized leader. Right? He had only placed leader A after 3 years. So we were going through our next internal audit because we do internal audit every 2 years. Within 2 weeks of starting the job, leader A leased a vehicle, an executive luxury edition Range Rover with the company expenses, which was unknown to the managing director, who was in a conference in Peru at the time. Leader B was very selfish and very impulsive. He also asked the staff, just like Leader A, to work late on evenings and come in over the weekends in order for us to complete all our auditing documents. However, Leader A didn't realize that when he leased the vehicle, it required him having a heavy license to drive it, which he did not have. So it took him 2 months to acquire this heavy license, while in the mainframe, the vehicle sat there and the company paid 2 months of lease expenses for a vehicle that was not being in use. When the staff had completed all the audit requests and the audit itself was completed, he rewarded us, the staff, with donuts bought by Rituals right next door, and he himself spent another $18,000 of the company's money to buy magrams and accessories to pimp out his new ride, as they call it. Unfortunately, he only lasted about 6 months because when the internal auditor's report came back, the exact word from the internal auditor was that he knew nothing, he did nothing, and he was a part of nothing for his role as the financial controller. He was eventually rendered powerless. And unfortunately for the department and the company on a whole, we failed in our auditing report for that year. So we will now discuss the unethical use of power. Unethical use of power is a growing concern for organizations over the years. One of the growing concerns for organizations over the years is sexual harassment. People in organizations depend on one another and especially on leaders for many resources, including information, cooperation, and even their jobs. When access to resources seems to depend on granting sexual favors or putting up with sexually intimidating or threatening comments, the person in a dependent position is being personally violated, whether or not the leader actually withholds the resources. So in many organizations today, policies are being implemented to deal with sexual harassment at a good pace. And in some companies, such as my own, they have also implemented no fraternizing policies to help in preventing sexual harassment claims amongst employees. Guidelines for ethical action. There are four main questions that a leader can consider and ask himself in order to help him make ethical decisions. These questions are: number one, is the action consistent with the organization goals rather than being motivated purely by self-interest? Two, does the action respect the rights of individuals and groups affected by it? Three, does the action meet the standards of fairness and equity? Four, would you wish others to behave in the same way if the action affected you? My favorite out of these four questions is question number 4 because it shows that the leader would empathize with others. And I believe that empathy is a positive characteristic that will help the leader in making ethical decisions. Conclusion. Leaders in today's organizations display charismatic, transformational, and transactional leadership styles and characteristics. Most leaders engage in political activity to achieve the organizational goals and to maintain the status quo. Charismatic leadership has positive and negative outcomes, which has made an indelible mark in world history. Leaders can be personalized or socialized leaders. So my question to you, class, and to you, sir, do you know what type of leader you are? That brings us to the end of our presentation. And now, if anybody have any questions for the group, this is our question and answer segment. Okay, so thank you very much for allowing us to share our project with you and our discussion. We hope that this information is very informative and it will be very useful to all of our remaining assessments. So thank you again, and thank you to Sir for allowing us to do this presentation on behalf of my fellow group members and myself.
All right, if there are no questions, I will pause the video. No? Okay.